Do you think this, deep down, I know you're a partisan, you're both partisan, everybody sort of watches the show as partisan, but do you really believe that he can't fix this?
Well, here's what I think. I think
Can he fix it?
He could probably fix the Ponzi scheme part, because the Ponzi scheme is, many people would agree with that. The thing he can't walk back is what Mitt Romney cleverly and smartly latched onto, which is, in his book, he says, by any measure, Social Security is a failure. He's not backing away from that. He's not backing away from Ponzi.
It sounds like the raw Ronald Reagan, the very early Reagan that railed against a lot of the New Deal, not the New Deal, the Great Society, didn't like Medicare, and then toned it down.
Yeah, and that's when he won. I think there's no question for me. I think he can recover from this. Certainly, there's a long way to go. But if you're going to use incendiary language and you don't have a plan to actually save it, you've got to be very careful, because voters are going to think
let's go back to everybody. Half the people watching the show are in that age group and some are younger. But let's go back to the simple fact. The genius of Franklin Roosevelt, who was a great president, maybe one of the greatest two or three, I think, was that he figured out that Social Security had to be for everybody, no means test. You paid for it while you worked. When you retired and had no other form of income, this would help you out. In fact, a lot of people were impoverished in the old days without Social Security. It's a great anti-poverty program. But then people started to live past 65. And so even the great Franklin Roosevelt didn't make it to 65. In those days, if you made it to 65, you were lucky. You got a few bucks out of Social Security. Today, lots of people, fortunately, make it past 65. They live into their 80s and 90s. They're still getting those checks. The system doesn't work that way anymore. It's not as healthy as it once was. So how's a Republican deal with the fact it is a Ponzi scheme in the sense that the money that's paid out every day is coming from people who paid in that day, right? It's not being made somewhere.
That's absolutely right. And you will never get back the amount of money that you pay into it under its current structure.
Some people are going to do that. Well, certainly poor people do pretty well under it. That's the idea.
Many people actually get back much more than they paid, which is one of the problems. And the other problem is that for a long period of time, and you know this, Chris, you worked on the Hill, people paid into the Social Security Trust Fund, and it was set aside. And then the politicians decided, well, we're going to go get that money, and we're going to use it to pay for other things, and we'll make it up later. They borrowed against it. Yeah. So one of the reasons that it's become a Ponzi scheme, if that's what it is, and it's a pejorative term, it's actually a criminal enterprise, is because the people in Washington haven't done.
Let's talk red meat. Why would a guy who seems to have his head on his shoulders, I don't agree with Perry, but he's not crazy, why does he think this works? To call it a criminal enterprise, basically to call it a monstrous lie, to use this infuriating language, and there are older people in South Florida who are going, wait a minute, I depend on that for my income. I don't like being told I'm part of a Ponzi scheme. Why does he risk it?
Well, this is certainly the tone that he has always used in his campaigns in Texas, and it's worked for him both in primary.
Beat your candidate.
Handily by 22 points. It's worked for him in primaries, and it's worked for him in general elections.
Why did Texans like this kind of language, Ponzi scheme language?
Well, it's aggressive. There's a certain swagger to it. It's big.
Coarseness to it.
Does he face a problem now if he buckles and begins to say, that was the wrong language? A big moderator, Brian Williams or somebody gets them to say under a Sunday show, or David Gregory, oh, I should have chosen different words. Does that weaken him on the right?
No, because he can say, look, he could say, you know what, it is a Ponzi scheme, but what I want to do now is talk about my plan to actually save it.
That's what I think is his open.
And that's where
you guys aren't going to forget it, are you?
No, it's on tape, and that's going to be a problem, because he's going to see that a lot. But listen, Rick Perry is an interesting candidate.